The massive alien ship hung over New York City like a silver mountain in the sky. People on the streets below pointed and took pictures. Some ran away in fear, but most just stared up in wonder. Captain Taman stood in the United Nations building, watching through the big windows. He wore his Korean Space Force uniform and felt nervous. This was humanity's first contact with aliens. Nobody knew what to expect. "They're requesting permission to land a shuttle," said Dr. Ha-Na, looking at her tablet. She worked at the Seoul Institute of Xenobiology, which meant she studied alien life. Until today, that had been mostly theory. The alien shuttle was smooth and white. It landed softly in Central Park. 3 tall beings stepped out. They had pale blue skin and large, gentle eyes. They wore simple robes that seemed to glow softly. Ambassador Kael'thas was their leader. He spoke perfect English, though his voice had a musical quality that made everything sound peaceful. He walked into the UN building with his 2 companions. The General Assembly Hall was packed. Every country had sent representatives. Taemin sat next to Ha-Na in the Korean section. Behind them sat Jae-sung, a military strategist with gray hair and sharp eyes. Kael'thas walked to the speaking platform. He moved gracefully like he was floating. When he began to speak, his voice filled the entire hall without any microphone. "People of Earth," he said, "we come to you with a gift of immeasurable value. Your world has been selected for inclusion in our Protected World Initiative." He waved his hand and a hologram appeared above the assembly. It showed Earth surrounded by a glowing blue shell. "For the past 1,000 years, my people, the Velthari, have protected 17 worlds from the dangers of space. We have saved billions of lives from asteroid strikes, cosmic radiation, and hostile forces." The hologram changed to show massive defense platforms floating in space. Energy beams shot out from them, destroying incoming meteors. The display was impressive. "These orbital defense platforms will shield your world completely. Nothing harmful will reach your surface. Your species can grow and develop in perfect safety." President Yoon of South Korea raised her hand. "What do you want in return?" Kael'thas looked surprised. "Nothing. This is a gift. We believe all intelligent life deserves protection while it develops." "Develops into what?" asked Taemin, standing up. "Into a peaceful, advanced civilization like ours. One day, when you have evolved beyond primitive aggression, you too may help protect younger species." Dr. Ha-Na frowned at the word primitive. She had 3 degrees in biology and physics. "Can you tell us more about these defense systems?" "Of course," Kael'thas smiled. "Each platform generates an energy field that can deflect objects moving at any speed. They have sensors that detect threats from millions of kilometers away. Our automated patrol ships can intercept anything that gets too close." "What about coordinated attacks?" asked Ha-Na. "I don't understand the question," said the alien. Jae-sung stood up slowly. He was old, but his voice was strong. "She means what happens if someone plans to attack your defenses on purpose." "Why would anyone do that?" asked Kael'thas. "Our shields are impenetrable. Any intelligent species would recognize this and avoid conflict." The humans in the room looked at each other. Some smiled slightly. "What if they don't avoid conflict?" asked General Park from the military section. "It has never happened," said Kael'thas confidently. "In 1,000 years, no species has ever persisted in attacking a Velthari protected world. They attempt once or twice, see our defenses, and leave, to find easier targets." Taemin raised his hand again. "What happens to the attackers?" "They leave," said Kael'thas, looking confused. "They realize they cannot win and go elsewhere." "You let them go?" asked Jae-sung, his eyes narrow. "Of course, we are a peaceful people. We defend, but we do not pursue or punish." The aliens' 2 companions whispered to each other nervously. The questions were not going as they had expected. Dr. Ha-Na stood up. "Mr. Ambassador, your defense systems sound very advanced, but they seem designed to protect against random threats, like asteroids or simple raiders." "That is correct," said Kael'thas, looking pleased that she understood. What if someone studies your defenses? What if they learn how your shields work and design weapons specifically to break them? The alien blinked his large eyes slowly. Why would anyone invest so much effort? There are many unprotected worlds they could attack instead. Colonel Shin from the Korean military leaned forward. Because some species don't just want any world. They might want Earth specifically. That is unlikely, said Kael'thos, but he sounded less certain now. Jae-sung grinned, showing his teeth. So your defense plan is to make attacks inconvenient and hope everyone gives up? It has worked for 1,000 years, said the alien stiffly. Against who? Asked Tae-min. Pirates mostly. Some asteroid miners who wanted to claim protected worlds. A few territorial disputes between neighboring species. Anyone who really wanted to destroy a world? Anyone who was willing to spend years planning and preparing? Asked Hana. Kael'thos looked uncomfortable. No truly advanced species would behave so irrationally. The humans were quiet for a moment. Then Jae-sung chuckled. Mr. Ambassador, he said, I think you might be surprised by how irrational some species can be. The alien delegation spoke among themselves in musical voices. Finally, Kael'thos turned back to the humans. Perhaps you could explain your concerns more clearly. We want to understand your perspective. President Yoon stood up. We appreciate your offer, but before we accept, we'd like to understand exactly what we're getting and what we might be giving up. Giving up? Asked Kael'thos. Our ability to defend ourselves, said Tae-min quietly. The alien looked genuinely confused. But why would you want to defend yourselves when we can protect you perfectly? Jae-sung's grin got wider. Because, Mr. Ambassador, there's a big difference between being protected and being able to protect yourself. Kael'thos stared at the old strategist. I do not understand the distinction. That, said Hana, might be a problem. The alien delegation asked for time to consider the humans' questions. They said they would return in 3 days with more detailed information about their systems. After they left, the UN assembly buzzed with conversation. Tae-min walked over to Dr. Hana. What do you think? He asked. She looked out the window at the massive ship still floating over the city. I think they're sincere. They really want to help. But I think they've never met anyone like us before. Jae-sung joined them, still grinning. Did you see their faces when we started asking about coordinated attacks? They look scared, said Tae-min. Not scared, said Hana. Confused. They can't imagine why anyone would keep fighting if the first attack fails. That, said Jae-sung, is going to be a problem. For them. 3 days later, the Velthari returned with more ships. 5 sleek vessels now floated above major cities around the world. The aliens seemed eager to answer all the human questions. Dr. Mi-young sat in a conference room in Seoul, surrounded by tablets and holographic displays. She was a theoretical physicist who specialized in energy fields and defensive systems. For the past 3 days, she had barely slept. Across from her sat Veltar, a Velthari technical specialist. He had been patiently explaining their shield technology for hours. His pale blue face showed genuine happiness at finding someone so interested in their work. The energy matrix can absorb kinetic force up to 50,000 terajoules per second, Veltar said proudly. We have never encountered a weapon that could exceed this capacity. What about sustained bombardment? Asked Mi-young, making notes on her tablet. The shields recharge faster than any known weapon can drain them. How fast is the recharge rate? Complete restoration in 0.3 seconds after impact. Mi-young nodded and wrote more numbers. What if someone hit the same spot repeatedly? Faster. Then the recharge time? Veltar blinked slowly. That would require precise timing and multiple weapons firing in perfect coordination. Is that impossible? It would be very difficult, said Veltar. And expensive. And time-consuming to plan. But possible? The alien shifted uncomfortably. Theoretically, yes, but no species has ever attempted such a complex strategy. In another room, Do-hyun was having his own conversation with a different Velthari expert. Do-hyun worked in cybersecurity for the Korean government. He understood how systems could be attacked in unexpected ways. Your automated patrol ships, he said to the alien engineer Kethmos, they respond to threats based on programmed patterns? Yes, very sophisticated patterns developed over centuries, said Kethmos proudly. Can these patterns be learned by observing the ships in action? I suppose so, but it would take many observations to understand our tactical responses. Do-hyun smiled. How many observations? Perhaps dozens of encounters? And if someone was willing to make dozens of encounters, even if they lost ships in the process? Kethmos looked disturbed. That would be wasteful and irrational. But possible? Yes, possible. Meanwhile, at the Pentagon, several human military leaders were meeting with Ambassador Kalthos himself. General Morrison from the United States sat next to Colonel Yer, Chung-ho from South Korea, and Major Eun-ji from Korean intelligence. Your defense philosophy is interesting, said Chung-ho politely. Very focused on protection. It is the only rational approach, said Kalthos. Violence only creates more violence. Eun-ji leaned forward. What do you do about enemies who don't care about rationality? All intelligent species are ultimately rational, said the alien confidently. Even when they're desperate? Asked Morrison. Even when they're facing extinction and have nothing to lose? Kalthos paused. We have not encountered such situations. What about species that see violence as honorable? Asked Seong-ho. Cultures that value fighting ability above all else? Such cultures usually destroy themselves before reaching space travel capability, said the alien. The human officers exchanged glances. Usually? Asked Eun-ji quietly. Back in Seoul, Dr. Hana was hosting a cultural exchange dinner. Several Velthari delegates sat around a table with Korean military and scientific personnel. The conversation had started pleasantly, but gradually became more serious. Commander Gunwoo was describing naval warfare tactics to a fascinated Velthari historian named Yelnara. The interesting thing about submarine warfare, Gunwoo said, is that the best defense often involves making your enemy afraid to enter the water at all. How do you accomplish that? Asked Yelnara. You sink enough of their ships that they stop sending ships. The alien looked troubled. That seems aggressive. It's effective, said Sora, a human historian. Throughout human history, the most successful defensive strategies often involved counterattacking. Counterattacking? Asked Yelnara. You don't just stop their attack, explained Wu Jin, an engineer. You make them pay such a high price that they don't want to attack again. Dr. Hana noticed the aliens becoming more uncomfortable as the evening progressed. The humans were sharing stories casually, but each story revealed something about human nature that seemed to disturb their guests. The Mongols invaded Korea many times, said Sora cheerfully. Each time, we learned their tactics and developed better responses. Did you eventually negotiate peace? Asked Yelnara hopefully. Eventually, yes, said Sora. After we made invasion so costly that they decided Korea wasn't worth the effort. How did you make it costly? Asked the alien nervously. Guerrilla warfare mostly. Attack their supply lines, ambush their patrols, make them afraid to leave. Their camps. The Velthari delegates whispered among themselves in their musical language. The humans could tell they were upset about something. Dr. Mi Young arrived at the dinner late, carrying a thick folder of analysis. She sat down next to Defense Minister Kyung-min and whispered urgently in his ear. His expression grew serious as he read her report. Dr. Mi Young has completed her analysis of the Velthari defensive systems, Kyung-min announced to the table. The aliens turned toward her with interest. They expected praise for their advanced technology. Your shields are remarkable, Mi Young began. Perfect protection against random cosmic threats, piracy, and opportunistic attacks. Veltar, who had spent the day with her, smiled proudly. However, Mi Young continued, I've identified several potential vulnerabilities to coordinated assault by a determined enemy. The alien smiles faded. For example, your energy matrix has a specific frequency resonance that could be exploited. Your patrol ships follow predictable patterns that could be mapped and countered. Your automated systems rely on threat assessment algorithms that could be confused by unexpected tactics. These are theoretical vulnerabilities, protested Kethmos. No species would invest the time and resources needed to exploit them. Hyejin, a young pilot, looked up from her soup. Why not? It would take years of preparation, hundreds of ships, and tremendous coordination, said the alien. So? Said Hyejin. The simple question hung in the air. The Velthari stared at her. You would need a species willing to sacrifice ships and crews just to learn our defenses, Kethmos continued weakly. And? Asked Dongsu, a former Special Forces operative. And they would need to specifically target your world, rather than choosing an easier target, added Veltar. Why would that stop them? Asked Gunwu. The aliens looked at each other with growing alarm. The humans were asking questions that had no good answers. Yelnara spoke up nervously. Surely no rational species would behave so persistently aggressive. Have you ever been in a fight where someone specifically wanted to hurt you? Asked Hyejin. Not just defeat you, but actually harm you personally? No, admitted Yelnara. My people eliminated interpersonal violence thousands of years ago. Dongsu set down his chopsticks. That explains a lot. What do you mean? Asked the alien. You've never fought someone who hated you, said Dongsu quietly. You've only dealt with practical conflicts, business disputes, resource competition, stuff where both sides can walk away. Is there another kind of conflict? Asked Kethmos. The humans around the table grew quiet. Even the cheerful Sora looked serious. Yes, said Hana softly. There are enemies who want to destroy you completely. Enemies who see your existence as an insult to their beliefs. Enemies who would rather die than let you live. But that's irrational, whispered Yelnara. Rationality, said Shungho, is not universal. 1 month after the Velthari established their protective grid around Earth, the massive orbital platforms hummed silently in space. The energy shields glowed faintly blue, visible even during daylight. Most humans had grown used to seeing them. Commander Gunwu stood on the deck of his ship in Busan Harbor, watching a Velthari shuttle approach. Tonight he was hosting a cultural exchange dinner aboard his vessel. The Korean Navy had volunteered to show their alien guests how human military forces operated. They seem nice enough, said Lieutenant Hyojun, Gunwu's communications officer. Very polite. Too polite, muttered Chief Petty Officer Malchin. Nobody's that friendly without wanting something. The shuttle landed smoothly on the ship's deck. 6 Veltari emerged, led by technical specialist Veltar and historian Yelnara. They wore simple robes that seemed to repel the ocean spray. Welcome aboard, said Gunwu, saluting formally. The aliens tried to copy the gesture, which made some of the crew smile. The dinner was set up in the ship's main conference room. Korean dishes filled the table, along with some alien foods that glowed softly and tasted like sweet flowers. The conversation started with simple topics like weather and food. Dr. Sora had come from Seoul University to help with translation and cultural explanation. She was cheerful and enthusiastic, which seemed to put the aliens at ease. This ship is quite old by our standards, Gunwu was explaining. Built 30 years ago, but we've upgraded the systems many times. Why not build a completely new ship? Asked Veltar. Too expensive, said Gunwu. We learned to make old things work better instead of always buying new things. An efficient approach, agreed the alien. Engineer Wu Jin joined the conversation. We call it adaptive engineering. When you can't have the best equipment, you learn to use what you have in creative ways. Creative how? Asked Yelnara. Wu Jin grinned. Well, during the Korean War, our forces didn't have enough anti-tank weapons, so they learned to use rice, cookers, and fertilizer to make explosives. The aliens looked shocked. Rice cookers? For cooking food? Pressure vessels, explained Wu Jin. Same principle as a bomb, just normally used for something peaceful. Dr. Sora laughed at the aliens' expressions. Humans are very good at turning peaceful things into weapons when necessary. And weapons into peaceful things, added Gunwu. The ship's radar was originally designed to track incoming missiles. Now we use it to rescue fishing boats during storms. The conversation continued, with humans casually mentioning concepts that clearly disturbed their guests. When Sora described the Mongol invasions of Korea, the aliens listened with growing horror. They came back 7 times? Asked Yelnara. 7 major invasions, yes, plus countless smaller raids. Why didn't they give up after the first defeat? Sora looked puzzled. Because they wanted to conquer Korea. One defeat didn't change their goal. But the cost in ships and soldiers. They had more ships and soldiers, said Sora simply. That's how determined enemies work. They keep coming until they win or they run out of resources. Veltar looked sick. How did Korea survive? We learned, said Gunwoo. Each invasion taught us something new about their tactics. We developed better fortifications, better weapons, better strategies. And we made them pay, added Chief Malchin grimly. Every invasion cost them more than the last one. Pay how? Whispered Yelnara. Dead soldiers, burned ships, destroyed supply lines. We made conquests so expensive that eventually they decided Korea wasn't worth the price. Dr. Mi Young arrived, by helicopter, carrying her analysis of the Velthari systems. Defense Minister Kyung Min had sent her to share her findings with the aliens directly. The minister thought you should hear this, she told Gunwoo quietly, then turned to the Velthari. I've completed my study of your defensive grid. The aliens perked up with interest. Your technology is impressive, Mi Young began, but I'm concerned about how it might perform against a truly determined enemy. What kind of enemy? Asked Veltar. Mi Young opened her tablet and showed them a simulation. One that studies your responses systematically. One that's willing to lose ships and crews just to gather data about your defenses. The holographic display showed waves of attacking ships being destroyed by the Veltari grid, but each wave was slightly different, testing different approaches. After enough attacks, patterns emerge, Mi Young explained. Shield recharge timing, patrol ship routes, sensor blind spots. But these attacks would be suicidal, protested Yelnara. No rational commander would sacrifice so many resources. What if rationality isn't their main concern? Asked Sora. I don't understand. Gunwoo leaned forward. What if they hate you more than they value their own lives? The aliens stared at him. Have you ever encountered an enemy like that? Asked Mi Young. No, admitted Veltar. Our conflicts have always been practical. Practical? Asked Wu Jin. Resource disputes, territorial boundaries, trade disagreements, issues that can be resolved through negotiation or demonstration of superior force. Chief Malchin snorted. You've never fought fanatics. Fanatics? True believers, explained Sora. People who think their cause is more important than their lives. That sounds insane, whispered Yelnara. Maybe, said Gunwoo, but insane enemies can be the most dangerous kind. The conversation was interrupted by Lieutenant Hyo Jun, rushing into the room. Commander, we're receiving a priority transmission from Space Command. What kind of transmission? Asked Gunwoo. Long-range sensors have detected an approaching fleet. Unknown design coming from outside the solar system. The room fell silent. The Velthari looked at each other nervously. How long until they arrive? Asked Mi Young. Approximately 6 months, said Hyojun. Veltar stood up quickly. We must notify our command ship immediately. Already done, said Hyojun. They're requesting an immediate meeting with human leadership. As the aliens prepared to leave, Dr. Sora asked one final question. In your 1,000 years of protecting worlds, have you ever faced an enemy that kept coming no matter what you did to them? Veltar paused at the door. No, never. Well, said Gunwoo, you might be about to learn something new. After the aliens left, the human officers sat quietly for a moment. What do you think? Asked Mi Young. I think, said Gunwoo, these Velthari are about to get an education they're not prepared for. Chief Malchin nodded grimly. And I think we better start preparing for the possibility that their shields won't be enough. Shouldn't we trust their technology? asked Lieutenant Hyojun. They've protected 17 worlds successfully. Against what kind of enemies? Asked Sora. Pirates, resource raiders? Or someone who really truly wants to destroy everything they protect? Mi-young looked at her analysis again. There's something else. Something I noticed in their shield patterns. What? Asked Gunwoo. Their defenses are designed to minimize damage to attackers. The shields deflect rather than destroy. The patrol ships disable rather than kill. So they've never fought anyone who saw mercy as weakness. Gunwoo stared out at the Velthari platforms glowing in the night sky. 6 months, he said quietly. I hope that's enough time. Enough time for what? Asked Hyojun. To teach our protectors how to fight a real war. The ship's communication system crackled to life. Messages were coming in from naval bases around the world. The approaching fleet had been detected by human systems as well as Velthari sensors. Mi-young read the technical data streaming across her tablet. Energy signatures suggest heavy weapons. Formation patterns indicate military discipline. Not pirates, then, said Malchin. No, agreed Gunwoo. Something much worse. What could be worse than pirates? Asked Hyojun. Sora answered, quietly, conquerors. 6 months of preparation had changed everything. The Velthari orbital platforms now glowed brighter, their shields stronger than ever before. Additional patrol ships floated in perfect formation around Earth. Ambassador Kael'thas assured everyone that the defenses were impenetrable. Admiral Park stood in the Korean Space Command Center, watching dozens of screens showing the approaching enemy fleet. Next to her, Colonel Shin studied tactical displays with growing concern. Corvani Empire, said Intelligence Officer Bae Young, reading from classified reports. Military conquest culture. They've destroyed 6 civilizations in the past century. Destroyed? Asked Colonel Shin. Not conquered? Total annihilation, confirmed Bae Young. They don't take prisoners or allow surrenders. Complete extinction of target species. President Yoon entered the command center with Ambassador Kael'thas and his technical staff. The alien looked calm and confident. The Corvani have arrived. At the edge of your solar system, announced the alien. Our sensors show approximately 200 warships of various classes. Is that a large fleet? Asked President Yoon. For pirates, yes. For a serious military force. Kael'thas paused. It is concerning. Admiral Park turned to face them. What's your assessment of their intentions? Standard conquest pattern, said Veltar, studying his instruments. They will likely demand surrender, then attack when we refuse. And your defenses will hold? Asked Colonel Shin. Absolutely, said Kael'thas confidently. Our grid can withstand any attack they might mount. Captain Taman entered the room carrying a datapad. His expression was grim. We've been monitoring Corvani communications, he reported. They're not interested in surrender negotiations. What do you mean? Asked the ambassador. They've designated Earth as a cleansing target. Complete biological sterilization to prepare for Corvani colonization. The room fell silent. Even the Velthari looked disturbed. That's extreme, whispered Kael'thas. It gets worse, said Taemin. They've been studying our defensive grid for the past 3 months. Long-range reconnaissance probes, communication intercepts, tactical analysis. Dr. Mi-young hurried into the command center with Captain Lee from communications. Admiral, we've detected massive energy buildups in the Corvani fleet, she reported. They're charging weapon systems we've never seen before. What kind of weapons? Asked Veltar nervously. Phase-shifted plasma cannons, gravity well generators, and something they're calling shield resonance disruptors, read Mi-young from her scanner. Veltar went pale. Shield resonance disruptors? That's theoretical technology. It shouldn't be possible. Tell that to them, said Captain Lee grimly. The main display screen lit up with an incoming transmission. A reptilian face appeared, covered in scales and scars. Yellow eyes glared out at them with pure hatred. I am war leader Krexthor of the Corvani Empire. The alien snarled. This system belongs to us now. We will sterilize your pathetic world and claim it for our offspring. Ambassador Kelthos stepped forward. This world is under Velthari protection. We strongly advise you to seek conquests elsewhere. Krexthor's mouth opened, showing rows of sharp teeth. Velthari, the weakling protectors. Your defensive grids are studied and countered. Your patrol ships are predictable and fragile. Your mercy is weakness. Our defenses have never been breached, said Kelthos, though his voice wavered slightly. Your defenses have never been tested, corrected the Corvani. Watch and despair. The transmission cut off. Immediately alarms began sounding throughout the command center. Incoming attack, shouted Captain Lee. Multiple assault waves approaching from different vectors. The Velthari defensive grid activated automatically. Brilliant blue energy beams lashed out at the attacking ships, destroying dozens of them instantly. The orbital platforms hummed with power as their shields deflected missile impacts. First wave neutralized, reported Veltar proudly. Minimal damage to our systems. But Admiral Park was studying the attack patterns on her tactical display. Something bothered her. Colonel Shin, are you seeing what I'm seeing? Shin nodded grimly. They're not trying to win. They're collecting data. The second wave of attacks came from a different direction. This time the Corvani ships used different weapons and approached at different speeds. Again, the Velthari defenses destroyed them efficiently. Second wave eliminated, announced Kelthos. Our shields are holding perfectly. Captain Taemin was monitoring enemy communications. Admiral, the Corvani are transmitting detailed sensor data back to their main fleet after each attack. They're learning, said Mi Young quietly. The third wave was different. The attacking ships coordinated their assault, hitting the same shield sections repeatedly in rapid succession. Some managed to penetrate the outer defense layer before being destroyed. Minor shield fluctuations, reported Veltar, but he sounded worried now. They're testing your recharge rates, observed Dr. Mi Young. Each attack is timed to hit before your shields can fully restore. The fourth wave brought a new horror. The Corvani ships didn't attack the platforms directly. Instead, they targeted you, the automated patrol ships, studying their response patterns and weapon capabilities. Patrol Squadron 7 is taking heavy casualties, reported Captain Lee. They're being systematically destroyed. Send reinforcements, ordered Kelthos. That's what they want, said Colonel Shin. They're learning how your ships respond to tactical situations. The fifth wave confirmed everyone's worst fears. The Corvani used their collected data to exploit weaknesses in the patrol ship formations, destroying entire squadrons before they could adapt. We're losing ships faster than we can deploy them, said Veltar in panic. Pull back the patrols, ordered Admiral Park. They're being used for target practice. But without patrol ships, the outer perimeter will be vulnerable, protested Kelthos. It's already vulnerable, said Taemin grimly. They know exactly how your ships fight now. The attack stopped. For 6 hours, the Corvani fleet remained at the edge of the system, apparently idle. But human sensors detected massive energy transfers between their ships. What are they doing? Asked President Yoon. Preparing, said Mi Young after studying the readings. They're connecting their ships into some kind of networked weapon system. That's impossible, said Veltar. No species has that level of coordination. The Corvani aren't like other species, said Intelligence Officer Bae Young. They're bred for war. Their entire civilization is built around military conquest. Ambassador Kelthos looked confused. But why? What do they gain from destroying other species? They don't see other species as valuable, explained Colonel Shin. To them, we're just obstacles in the way of their expansion. But that's irrational, protested the alien. No, said Admiral Park quietly. That's fanaticism. And fanatics are the most dangerous enemies of all. The Corvani fleet began moving toward Earth. 200 warships in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready. The real attack is beginning, announced Captain Lee. Our defenses will hold, said Kelthos, but his confidence was gone. Will they? Asked Admiral Park. Because I don't think this is going to be like your previous experiences. On the main, screen, the Corvani ships began changing formation. Instead of attacking randomly, they moved with precision and purpose. Every ship knew exactly where to go and what to do. "They're using everything they learned," whispered Myung. The first coordinated assault hit the Velthari grid with devastating effect. Multiple ships fired simultaneously at single shield points, overwhelming the recharge capacity. Gaps appeared in the defensive barrier. "Shields failing in sectors 7 and 12, reported Veltar in horror. More attacks followed, each one precisely targeted at the weakest points in the grid. The Corvani weren't just attacking randomly anymore. They were surgically dismantling the Velthari defenses piece by piece. "This is impossible," said Kael'thas. "Our defenses are perfect." "Perfect against random attacks," corrected Admiral Park. "But these aren't random." Colonel Shin turned to her. "Admiral, request permission to activate our forces." "Your forces?" asked Kael'thas in confusion. Admiral Park looked at the alien ambassador. "We've been preparing too." "For what?" "For the possibility that your shields wouldn't be enough." The Velthari defensive grid was failing. Gaps in the energy shields grew larger as Corvani ships poured concentrated fire into weak points. Ambassador Kael'thas stared at his displays in shock, watching his perfect defenses crumble. Sector 15, shield collapse imminent, reported Veltar desperately. "We're losing orbital platform 7. Admiral Park turned to General Nam, who had arrived with a convoy of military vehicles. "General, status report." "All human forces ready and standing." "Pipe," Nam replied crisply. "Space Force, Navy, Army, and Air Force coordinated and prepared." "Prepared for what?" asked Kael'thas frantically. "Your species lacks the technology to fight in space." "We don't need to fight in space," said Captain Tae Min, entering the command center in full combat gear. "We need to fight smart." On the main display, Corvani ships broke through the failing shields and began descending toward Earth's atmosphere, their weapons charged for planetary bombardment. "They're going to sterilize the surface," whispered Dr. Myung. "Request permission." "To engage," said Captain Tae Min. Admiral Park looked at President Yoon, who nodded grimly. "Permission granted," said the Admiral. "All units commence Operation Hornet's Nest." "What is Operation Hornet's Nest?" demanded Kael'thas. "You'll see," said Colonel Shin. The first indication something had changed came from the Corvani fleet. Communications. War leader Krexthor's voice crackled with confusion and rage. "What are these insects doing? Why are they approaching us?" Human ships launched from hidden positions throughout the solar system. They were smaller than Corvani vessels, but they moved with deadly purpose. Instead of defending Earth, they rushed straight toward the enemy fleet. "This is insane," said Veltar. "They're outnumbered 10-1. "Numbers aren't everything," said Lieutenant Sujin, piloting the lead fighter squadron. Her voice came through the communication system. "Hunter squadron engaging enemy formation." The human ships didn't attack like the Velthari. Instead of standing off and trading fire, they dove in close, using the Corvani ship's own size against them. Sujin's fighters slipped between the massive warships targeting engines and weapon systems. "They're too small to target effectively," complained a Corvani voice on the intercepted communications. "Then use area effect weapons," snarled Krexthor. But when the Corvani fired their widespread weapons, they hit their own ships as much as the human fighters. The human pilots had positioned themselves where the enemy couldn't shoot without causing friendly fire. "Clever," admitted Veltar grudgingly. Commander Yu coordinated the second phase of the attack. His submarine-trained crews used stealth technology to approach from Earth's shadow, invisible to Corvani sensors until they were too close to avoid. "Underwater tactics in space," explained Colonel Shin to the confused aliens. "Same principles. Stay hidden, get close, hit hard." Yu's ships emerged from behind the moon and struck at the Corvani supply vessels. Without warning, 3 enemy ships exploded as their fuel and ammunition stores detonated. "You're attacking their logistics," realized Myung, "cutting off their supplies." "Always hit the enemy where they're weakest," said Admiral Park. "Supply ships can't fight back effectively." The Corvani fleet began to reorganize, trying to protect their vulnerable support vessels. But this gave Captain Kim's heavy assault group their opportunity. "Hammer Squadron, this is Hammer Leader," Kim's voice announced. "Enemy formation scattered. Begin primary assault." Kim's ships were the largest in the human fleet, armed with weapons designed for ship-to-ship combat. But instead of engaging the enemy warships directly, they targeted the command and control vessels. "Take out their coordination," Kim ordered. "Make them fight as individuals instead of as a fleet." The Corvani response was swift and brutal. Dozens of human ships were destroyed in the counterattack. But the survivors didn't retreat. They pressed closer, accepting losses to inflict maximum damage. "Why don't they withdraw?" asked Yelnara in horror. "They're being slaughtered." "Because they know something you don't," said Major Choi, watching the tactical display. "Sometimes, you have to accept casualties to achieve victory." The turning point came when Colonel Bay implemented the most dangerous part of the plan. His special operations teams had quietly deployed throughout the outer system during the past 6 months, hiding on asteroids and dead moons. "Ghost teams, this is Control," Bay transmitted. "Target is confirmed. Begin sabotage operations." The Corvani had spread their fleet across a wide area to avoid human attacks. But this meant their rear guard was vulnerable to the hidden human teams. Explosions blossomed throughout the enemy formation as supply depots and communication relays were destroyed. "Impossible," gasped Krexthor. "How did they get behind us?" "They've been there for months," said Captain Lee, monitoring the communications, waiting. The Corvani fleet tried to regroup, but their coordination was breaking down. Individual ship commanders made their own decisions, attacking random targets instead of following the overall strategy. "Their formation discipline is collapsing," observed Admiral Park with satisfaction. Captain Taman led the final phase of the assault. His squadron had been waiting in Earth's upper atmosphere, hidden among the orbital debris and defunct satellites. "This is Earth Defense Force," Taman broadcast on all frequencies. "Message to the Corvani Empire. You wanted our planet? Come, take it." His ships erupted from concealment like predators from ambush. The Corvani had expected resistance from the surface or from space, but not from the boundary between them. Taman's fighters struck at the Corvani ships attempting planetary bombardment. They used Earth's gravity well and magnetic field to their advantage, making impossible maneuvers that confused and disoriented the enemy. "How are they flying like that?" demanded a Corvani pilot. "Home field advantage," explained Taman over the open channel. "We know this system better than you do." The battle raged for 18 hours. Human ships were destroyed by the dozens, but they took enemy vessels with them. More importantly, they disrupted the Corvani formation and strategy. War leader Krexthor found himself fighting not one coordinated fleet, but hundreds of individual human ships that refused to follow any predictable pattern. "They fight like savages," he complained. "No formation, no discipline." "No," corrected Admiral Park, listening to the intercepts. "They fight like humans." The decisive moment came when Major Choi's tactical analysis proved correct. The Corvani, frustrated by their losses and disorganized by the chaotic human attacks, made a critical error. "They're consolidating their remaining ships," reported Captain Lee, "pulling everything together for a final assault." "Perfect," said Colonel Shin. "Now they're concentrated in one location." "That makes them easier to target," realized Dr. Mi-young. The human fleet had been scattered and seemingly disorganized. But at Admiral Park's command, every surviving ship converged on the Corvani concentration. "All units, this is Admiral Park. Execute Operation Closing Fist." What had appeared to be random chaos suddenly revealed itself as planned coordination. Human ships attacked the consolidated Corvani fleet from every direction simultaneously. The enemy, packed together for mutual defense, found themselves unable to maneuver or retreat. Human weapons, individually weaker than Corvani guns, combined their fire to overwhelm enemy shields and armor. "This was planned," realized Krexthor with growing horror. "The entire battle was planned." "From the beginning," confirmed Captain Taman. "We let you think you were winning." Within 6 hours, the Corvani fleet was either destroyed or fleeing toward the outer system. The few surviving enemy ships limped away, carrying news of their defeat back to their empire. Ambassador Kael'thas stared at the tactical display in amazement. How? We didn't try to outgun them, explained Admiral Park. We outthought them. But your losses were acceptable, said General Nam firmly. We achieved our objective. Your objective was to survive, said Veltar. No, corrected Colonel Shin. Our objective was to make them regret attacking us. President Yoon addressed the Velthari delegation. Your offer of protection was generous and appreciated, but we learned long ago that the best defense is making your enemies afraid to attack you. How do you make enemies afraid? Asked Yelnara. Captain Kim answered from his damaged ship. You hurt them so badly that they never want to fight you again. But that's so violent, protested Kael'thas. Violence, said Major Choi, is sometimes the only language that aggressors understand. In the weeks that followed, reports reached Earth of the Corvani Empire's reaction to their defeat. The few surviving ships had carried word of humanity's fighting ability throughout their territory. There, avoiding human space, reported Intelligence Officer Bei Young with satisfaction. Word is spreading that Earth is too dangerous to attack. Ambassador Kael'thas approached Admiral Park privately. We would like to learn from your military tactics. To become more aggressive? Asked the Admiral. To understand how to truly protect the worlds we guard, the alien replied. Our defensive philosophy may not be enough anymore. Admiral Park nodded. We can teach you, but you need to understand something first. What? The most effective defense isn't just stopping attacks. It's making potential attackers choose not to attack in the first place. How do you do that? You make sure everyone knows, said the Admiral, that attacking you will cost more than they're willing to pay.